At the G20 conference, European leaders declined to speak with Biden. The G20 summit was successfully held. Recently, high-level meetings between Western leaders and China have been scheduled, with Germany and France representing the West. All parties have provided briefings that have shown very rich information. According to stories on political news websites, the recent high-level discussions between Biden and Scholz with China demonstrate the disparity between the U.S. and Germany's approaches toward China. The United States and Germany are likely to develop a political rift over this divide. Germany was chosen by the news site to be contrasted with the United States, in part because it is Europe's largest economy and has close economic and commercial links to China. Scholz is also more representative from any standpoint as the first Western leader to visit China on his own initiative in recent memory. Scholz's outlook. It also somewhat reflects how the U sees ties with China. As a result, there are discrepancies between German and American views of China on the surface. However, the biggest organization that can effectively compete with the U.S. is the UN. The disparity between American and German views of China really reflects differences between American and European views of China. But because this problem is more intricate, we must elaborate and talk gently. Where did this discrepancy first come from? As we are all aware at this point, Scholz's travel to China was accompanied by a business delegation from leading German corporations, demonstrating that the main goal is to strengthen bilateral commercial and trade connections with the Chinese side. Half of the 8 people present in Biden's high-level meeting with the Chinese side were in charge of national security matters, including 2 of our familiar faces. One is Sullivan, the nation's security advisor. The other is the Indo-Pacific Czar, who is the coordinator of Indo-Pacific matters for the U.S. National Security Council. Campbell, the Indo-Pacific Czar. The USS preference for national security composition may also be a sign that, although publicly claiming not to want war with China, the U.S. continues to view China as a threat to the U. Has a different perspective on this matter, though, and sees China as a potential partner. We can also observe that the 2 biggest economies in the EU, Germany and France, are frequently brought up when discussing Sino-European ties, the Chinese side in their interactions with them. Scholz emphasized during his tour to China that Europe and China cannot be separated from one another. Additionally, French President Emmanuel Macron stated at the G20 meeting that France is ready to aggressively support Sino-European dialogue and collaboration, arguing in favor of autonomous diplomacy and against camp conflict. Why did the United States and Europe hold such disparate views of China? The cause is actually fairly straightforward. That pertains to how the landscape of the planet will develop in the future. There are significant contrasts between the EU and the US. Benefits of China's proposed multipolar world order are shared by Germany and France. Therefore, both nations aim to facilitate a seamless transition, create a solid alliance with China in Europe, and work together to address global concern. For the United States, maintaining its unipolar hegemony is the strategic goal. In light of the contemporary China, it is already pretty obvious what the meaning of this distinction is. The United States and Europe can no longer agree on anything. Even while there are clearly disparities between American and European views on China, it is important to be aware that this is. However, there is still a layer of ideological communication and affinity between the United States and Europe. The United States' long-term political and military level. If you want to try to have a relationship with China that is autonomous and independent, there will inevitably be heavy restrictions coming from the American side. Furthermore, the EU does not speak with a single voice when it comes to China. Germany and France have thus far been able to influence the EU's orientation, but only to a limited degree. The political attitude essentially supports the US, while ignoring the EU's demands in a multipolar world. The EU's strategy toward China is fairly clear given the divergent perspectives of the old and new European groupings on their interactions with China. In turn, this oscillation may be viewed as a dynamic equilibrium in the US-European relationship as it is now. Following Europe, Japan, and Australia have also expressed a desire to communicate with China. Fumio Kishida, the Prime Minister of Japan, also stated that he is presently in talks with China about the prospect of a summit between the 2 nations' leaders, and that he hopes to have a meeting with China that will advance bilateral tie. Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia, prior to departing for a series of conferences such as the G20, according to his statements, the Australian side wishes to strengthen ties with China, its greatest trading partner on November 11th. cooperation with China wherever feasible, and open communication are what I would want to see. The next day, Australian Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that as part of continuous efforts to rekindle bilateral ties, his nation intended to collaborate more closely with China on topics like climate change. It is clear that even U.S. allies Australia and Japan must now temporarily set aside their animosity against China in order to temper their interactions with the country and promote greater collaboration. The current state of affairs is a result of Europe's fervent need for assistance from its big brother, the United States, whenever it finds itself in serious difficulty. But at this point, the United States moved its focus to the Asia-Pacific area in order to further its own interests. According to media sources, President Joe Biden chose to elevate the connection between the United States and ASEAN to a comprehensive strategic partnership while attending the U.S. An ASEAN Leaders Conference on the same day. It has long been known that the United States and ASEAN are improving its relationship. In May of this year, the United States conducted a special U.S.-ASEAN summit at which the two presidents declared they would make the changes later in the year. In response to this action by the U.S. and ASEAN, we previously stated that China was pleased to see the U.S. and other extraterritorial nations play a significant role in the peaceful development of the region, but that China will never accept any actions that jeopardize regional cohesion, peace, or stability. The degree of relations between the U.S. and ASEAN is raised for the moment. The perception abroad is that the U.S. continues to use ASEAN as a pawn. There is too much of the United States. The United States' staunchest ally, Europe, is in need of assistance. As the older brother of the United States, he thrashed the dog in addition to refusing to offer assistance. Cannot tolerate that, even though Europe is more submissive. France, one of the EU's leaders, took the initiative. Macron joined forces with another leader, Germany, and made caustic public criticisms of the United States. Prior to their meeting, Macron and Scholz agreed that if the United States insisted on continuing to harvest Europe, then after the Russia-Ukraine war, Europe would have to retaliate. The genuine goal of the United States should be understood in Europe as well. Without sending a single soldier into battle, the U.S.-sponsored war in Russia and Ukraine succeeded in weakening both Russia's military and economy. It also sparked a number of crises in Europe, which led to the EU's transition from strength to weakness. And the latter, the EU, just abruptly learned how dependent on Russia Europe is for energy after its own crises. However, in order to impose sanctions on Russia, European nations ceased nearly all energy cooperation with that country, particularly in the area of natural gas, plunging the EU into a severe energy crisis. The U.S. appears to believe that the energy crisis won't have much of an impact on the UA's power, so it took advantage of the energy crisis in Europe to seize the natural gas market and rise to second place among European natural gas suppliers. However, the cost of long that the United States exports to Europe is significantly higher, 3 to 4 times higher, than the cost on the domestic market in the United States. The rising cost of natural gas has significantly raised the cost of living for people in Europe and made the country's inflation problem worse. The intermittent marches and rallies have also worn down the governments in Europe. Click on these videos to see more secret news you didn't hear about.